hope lives always. And sometimes it rises up to inspire us when we're only barely paying attention. After 100+ videos, you've probably noticed something in this room. A sign over my head that says, "Love others." A sign that looks remarkably similar to the thumbnails for every single video. Remarkably similar to that huge banner in my front yard from the video that I posted yesterday. There's a reason for this. And there's a story behind this. And it's a story that is filled with hope at every step along the way. And so for the next few days, I'm going to share with you different parts of that story and where hope lies within them. The story begins with me as a student at Wake Forest, a student in college trying to find purpose in my life, trying to figure out what it is I'm supposed to do with my life, who I'm supposed to be. I already knew that I believed in God. I already knew that I needed to be a minister, that this is what God was calling me to be. And so I already knew that I was going to end up in seminary taking classes in Christianity. So while I was in college, and maybe part of it was to see if I could find a way out of a calling that I knew was going to be difficult. Instead of taking classes on the Bible, instead of taking classes in Christianity, since I knew that's what I would end up doing in seminary, I took world religions. Every semester taking a different class in a different world religion. A class in Buddhism or Hinduism, a class in Islam. I've taken classes in Australian Aboriginal spirituality. I have taken classes about indigenous cultures and their spirituality in the rainforest. All these different faiths. And I've come to see a greater knowledge of my own faith in Jesus in doing that. But one of the most amazing things that I heard came, of all places, from a class of a religion outside of my own. A class on Islam. My professor was a visiting professor from Egypt. He was really there wanting to teach a class in Arabic. But in order to teach that class, he also had to teach an Islam class. And he would teach a very normal way of teaching. It was interesting. I took notes. But occasionally this man would say something sort of off the beaten path, outside of the lesson, that everybody seemed to miss. But I'd jot these gems down in my notes in the corner of the margins. And one of these things, I'll share with you two of them that changed the course of my life and brought us to where we are today in terms of why this sign and why the big banner in my yard. The man said, "You know what the biggest problem with the world is? The biggest problem is everybody can find a problem. But who's doing anything about it?" I wrote this down in my notes. I looked around the room to see if anybody else noticed this amazing thing that was spoken by a professor, and no one seemed to. A few days later, as I was pondering that in my head, well, what is the problem that I see in the world, and how can I be the one to step up and do something about it? My professor said something else. He said, he was talking about Islam. And he said, Islam is two things. It's belief and it's practice. And if you don't have both, you have nothing. If you're believing something that you're not putting into practice, you're not really believing it. And if you're practicing something that you do not believe, you're going to accomplish nothing because your heart is not in it. Well, quickly I applied that not just to Islam and my coursework, but to my own faith. That Christianity should be belief and practice. And if we're not putting into practice what we believe, then why do we believe it at all? And if we're putting into practice something that we don't believe, How are we surprised when that doesn't come to fruition, when that doesn't accomplish anything? Our heart is not in it. And so I started wondering, and I started thinking about what in my life was about belief and practice, and how was my life about belief and practice. I don't want to leave you with anything more than this today. I want to share with you that hope is that way too. That hope is belief and practice. If we just hold on to hope and we believe that it's there, but we do nothing to support that belief, then we can't be surprised when it's hard for us to see hope. And if we're trying as hard as we can to present hope and to put hope front and center in our life, but we don't really believe that it's there, there's not going to be a whole lot to that. It's not going to accomplish much. So I want you to think today about how hope for you can be about both belief and practice. What is it that you believe about hope, and what are you doing about that? And maybe your answer to that question will create things that you didn't imagine, just like it did for me. And as I continued to reflect on those two statements, the biggest problem in the world is that everyone finds a problem, but no one's doing anything. And it's about belief and about practice. And if you don't have both, you have nothing. As I continued to think about those things as a young college student, something amazing happened. And I will share with you more of that story tomorrow. It is a story of hope, because hope lives, always.